Leftists are going whole hog against Georgia's new voter laws. Major League Baseball got so mad they pulled their All-Star game out of Atlanta and moved it to Colorado, which also incidentally has voter ID laws. Anyway, and now they've got a fun little catchphrase they've started using to describe simple rules, like saying you have to show a photo ID at the polls. It's the new Jim Crow, which would be funny in its stupidity if it weren't so very insulting to those who actually suffered under Jim Crow. Liberals have proven they have no problem exploiting one of the most heinous times in American history so that they can lie to people and get their way. Because long ago they decided that black people are too stupid to think this through. After all, Democrats were the ones who passed Jim Crow in the first place, and apparently their low opinion of black Americans hasn't changed much. Leftists, from activists and Democrat politicians in Congress to talking heads with a microphone in an 8 p.m. time slot, have taken to calling Georgia's basic new voter laws Jim Crow 2.0.
President Biden, of course, called efforts to restrict voting in your state of Georgia and elsewhere an atrocity. He said it was Jim Crow in the 21st century.
This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle.
Let's keep calling it what it is. It's Jim Crow 2.0.
Jim Crow 2.0.
Jim Crow 2.0.
Georgia passed sweeping new voting legislation, including many restrictions that some Democrats, such as Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock and Stacey Abrams, have compared to Jim Crow laws.
We are witnessing right now a massive and unabashed assault on voting rights, unlike anything we've ever seen since the Jim Crow era.
Jim Crow 2.0.
Jim Crow 2.0.
The protest was billed as Stop Jim Crow 2.0.
This is Jim Crow in new clothes.
They're simple laws, like saying you can't hand out free stuff to voters in line, you can't vote like 4 months before Election Day, you have to have a reason to cast a ballot by mail, and you have to bring a photo ID with you when you show up to the polling center. Basic stuff to help weed out fraud and protect election integrity. And somehow, that's Jim Crow 2.0. Jim Crow, really.
Jim Eagle.
Never mind that 73% of black Americans say they actually support voter ID laws, because contrary to what leftists want you to believe, most black Americans are not so stupid that they can't get a driver's license or a simple photo ID. No, this is Jim Crow 2.0. The only people who'd ever use that phrase either have no idea what Jim Crow actually was, or they know full well, and they're okay with using inflammatory race-baiting language to purposefully paint a fake picture of what is actually happening here. Because anyone with half a brainstem and an ounce of basic decency understands that asking someone to show a photo ID at the polls, the same ID you have to show at a bank or a bar or an airport or a federal building, is not anywhere close to Jim Crow. Let's take a little trip down history lane for those too lazy to open a book or do a little bit of basic Googling now, shall we? Under old Jim Crow laws, written by Democrats, blacks couldn't vote ever, really. Laws were written to ban people like the illiterate from casting a ballot, and they were disproportionately applied to black people. Blacks were physically separated from whites in restaurants, bathrooms, buses, train stations, schools, universities, libraries, public parks, barbershops, stores, theaters, on sports teams, and even in the military. White nurses could actually deny medical care to black patients. Interracial marriage was banned. Books couldn't be swapped between segregated schools and libraries. Renting to both white and black families in the same housing building was punishable by jail. Hospital entrances were kept separate for black and white patients, with whites often being given priority. Blacks couldn't be buried in the same cemeteries as whites. Printing or distributing materials in support of equality between races was illegal. Black schools, universities, libraries, prisons, and public spaces were deliberately and consistently underfunded. Arbitrary violence against black Americans was routinely ignored and even encouraged in many places. To say that asking someone to show an ID at a polling station equates in any way to that insanity is disgusting, and it shows either an extreme ignorance of the facts or a willful disregard for those who suffered under those laws and who fought for decades to overturn them. We live in a country where some of the wealthiest, most powerful, and most famous people are black, where little white boys and girls have posters of black athletes and musicians on their walls, and that's normal. Are you familiar with this lady?
My name is Patrice Cullors. I am the co-founder of Black Lives Matter. I'm also
the executive director of the Black Lives Matter Global Network.
This is Patrisse Cullors. She's the Marxist who helped co-found Black Lives Matter, you know, because black folks are so oppressed that they can't be expected not to raid the local Target or Nike store when they get pissed off. Yeah, that was this lady. And she just plunked down $1.4 million to buy a home in Beverly Hills. True story. In fact, she's racked up quite the little real estate empire since helping start a movement that's left more than a few small businesses in ashes and rubble. Patrisse Cullors went on a house buying binge with all her newfound cash, snagging 4 high-end homes for a total of $3.2 million in the U.S. alone. And that doesn't count the property she was reportedly looking at in the Bahamas. Must be nice.
Trying to get some money.
This black woman made more money from screaming racism over the past few years than many white people will ever see in their lifetimes. And yet we're supposed to believe that we're living with Jim Crow because people are being asked to show an ID? When this woman is buying multiple houses and setting up shop in Beverly Hills, Jim Crow? Really?
Yeah, pretty much.
When black congressmen and senators can go on primetime TV shows and scream about oppression because people are being asked to show a license to cast a vote, your very existence and status in this country disproves your own point, Jim Crow. Let's talk about what racism actually looks like in 2021, not some fictitious oppression y'all made up to bully people into voting your way. Actual racism. Here's another list. A list of all the things Democrats apparently think that black people are too stupid to do. Here we go. Get good grades, get into college, get a good job, get promoted, make money, pay your own bills, stay out of jail and off drugs, have a baby, raise a child, use the internet, find a vaccine center or a polling place, get an ID, remember to bring water on a hot day, and apparently see right through this pile of absolute garbage that they're being fed by a party that needs them to stay perpetually victimized because God knows we can't have black folks actually succeed in life, because then they won't need the government or all the elitist politicians who get rich off of promising them stuff they don't actually plan to deliver. That is racism. The racism of low expectations. The racism that thinks black Americans are dumber than a sack of potatoes and won't ever get a leg up in life unless Uncle Sam gives them a boost. Jim Crow laws were based on the godless, heinous theory that black Americans were worth less than whites, could do less than whites, and would never achieve the same as whites. And the liberal policies of today are based on those same lies. If you really want to call out Jim Crow and send him straight to hell where he belongs, start there. And that's your Reality Check, America. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble pages, like us on Facebook and Twitter, and stay sane out there.